All right. Sorry about that. Let's go ahead and get started now that we've recorded. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about meal replacements today and just some ideas and suggestions behind it. I'll repeat some of the things I said before we started the recording. And that is that we have a number of options with Top Shelf Nutra to replace a meal. And some of you might say, when you say replace a meal, wait a second, what are we talking about? It's not that we don't want to eat our regular meals and food. It's that we're trying to give our body a break to repair and rebuild and maintain itself. And it's difficult for the body to do that when we are inflamed. And so certain foods cause inflammation. If we have any sensitivities or allergies, that is an immune response. And that immune response is usually inflammation. Also, with the way our food supply is today, with all of the herbicides and pesticides and chemicals that are on there, also with the genetic modifications that have been done and the hybridization, our foods are now containing things in them, even in, processed foods for sure, because of all the preservatives and dyes and things that go into the processing. But even our natural produce now contains these things that are inflammatory to our bodies. And so more and more our bodies stay in a state of inflammation. And so one of the goals and ideas here is to give our body a break. We have a break when we sleep. Okay. When we sleep, the body is no longer taking in calories. It's no longer spending time with exposure other than breathing. And so it's meant that the body can kind of shut down some of the systems. We don't have to run a race. We don't have to do some of these things. And it allows the body to steer its energy and its focus towards a lot of rebuilding and repairing. So the challenge is that if we are still suffering from inflammation, then those things can't happen. And some of you know what I mean, because you've woken up in the morning and you've like, did I even sleep? Right? You felt like your body was working all night and you never got a rest. Well, it's because if our bodies stay in a state of inflammation, it's a state of congestion. And some of you might have experienced that if you try to drive from one side of town to the other side of town in the middle of rush hour, right? There's congestion. There's a higher likelihood of an accident, and therefore that even adds to the congestion. Vehicles break down, and then they have to get off the side of the road, and there's no room for them. All of these things are problematic, and they become exacerbated when there is congestion in place. And that is a perfect comparison or analogy to inflammation. So one of the reasons why we recommend a real meal replacement is not just for bringing down carbohydrates or caloric intake or sugar and things like that. Those are all beneficial. But one of the things we don't talk about, I don't think as much, is that one of the reasons why we recommend a meal replacement is because we want to replace a meal with a low inflammation meal. We want something to add to this period of time where there is low congestion, low inflammation, and the body can move nutrients where it needs and repair and maintain and rebuild tissues. So one of the things that is a great strategy is, since you're going to be sleeping anyway, is to have a meal replacement either before you sleep or after you sleep, so that what you're doing is you're extending that period of low inflammation and extending the repair and rebuild period. Because sometimes it might be harder to do to have a long enough period of time in the middle of the day. If you can, then great in the middle of the day as well. And of course, if you can be really good with your food choices, you can keep a low inflammation all day. And that's the ideal. And that's what, Jen and Robin have been training us on our food choices. We can choose low inflammation food for all of our meals. But if you're eating out at a restaurant, you don't necessarily have the control about what goes into it. You're victim to whatever the chef chooses in the kitchen, right? And they might use more inflammatory ingredients. They might use more vegetable oils and cook with them. They might use more sugar. They might use some fillers and other ingredients that cause your body to react. And you've probably experienced that. You've probably eaten at a restaurant and either during the meal or post the meal, you thought, man, I really don't feel very good. And all I ate was this. Well, you didn't eat your recipe of it or your version of it. You ate someone else's. And in a restaurant, sometimes they're trying to do things for efficiency, right? To be able to get the meals out quickly. And so they're using perhaps some preserved ingredients. A perfect example of this is eggs, right? Eggs are a great food. But many times if you're eating scrambled eggs from a restaurant, they're using eggs from a bag. And those have been blended up and mixed with vegetable oils so that they can preserve them. So the restaurant is buying a bag. Yes, they keep it refrigerated, but in order to increase the shelf life, they're buying a bag of blended egg with vegetable oil in it so that they can quickly make scrambled eggs. They don't have to keep eggs in their shells. They don't have to crack them. They don't have to do any of that. And you're thinking, I'm just eating eggs, but you don't realize that they're actually a processed egg that is made to increase efficiencies and store longer on the shelf for restaurant owners. So that's just one example. But if you go and look behind the scenes a little bit at restaurants, you'll find that there's quite a few of those types of things. It's not the same as home cooked. And even home cooked, even if you're eating just produce, we don't have the same level of produce that we used to. We've done a lot of things with regards to herbicides and pesticides. We've hybridized and genetically modified our food. And so they are more difficult for the body to break down. Yes, they're prettier. Okay. The apples don't have as many indulations. They're perfectly formed. The carrots are prettier, all of these things, but they are not the same carrots that we used to grow in our gardens with our grandparents and great-grandparents. Today's food has been changed. And yeah, the farmers are able to grow more. The yields per acre have increased. They produce varieties that are that don't react to certain herbicides, and so they can spray the entire field and kill off the weeds. And but the plants have been hybridized and genetically modified so that the weed killer doesn't kill the plants. And yeah, you get beautiful produce as a result of it. Can even have higher sugar and brick scores and so forth. However, the chemicals that have been sprayed on it are winding up in the food. And what do those chemicals do? They cause inflammation in our bodies. Now, you're not going to be able to perfectly avoid that. Even if you cooked every meal at home, I guess is my point, you're not going to be able to completely avoid that. And so we've talked last week about giving our body extra tools to help detoxify, help neutralize and eliminate a lot of the things that end up in our bodies because of our food supply and so forth. And so there's a lot of those tools we can do. But one other strategy is to pick either dinner or breakfast, whichever is more convenient for you. And when possible, maintain a low inflammation diet. And an easy way to do that is with one of our meal replacements. Okay. So Jen Winder talked about this. You can make a shake. You can easily throw some powder in a shaker bottle with some water, and you've got yourself a meal replacement. Now, if you want to spice it up a little bit, you can throw it in a blender and you can add some other things to it, and you can increase what's in it and change the flavor a little bit and so forth. And that's a wonderful program as well, is to make a shake. Blend it up in a blender where you can add some cocoa powder to it, or you can add some berries or something like that. It's a wonderful thing, and it tastes great. Also, some of you might be aware that you can actually use it to make ice cream. If you have one of those little personal ice cream makers, and you can flavor it and add it in, because it's basically heavy cream. You just use it as a replacement in that recipe for homemade ice cream, and you've got yourself a low inflammatory, low carbohydrate, high fat, and healthy protein ice cream. Again, a low inflammation type of a meal that you could have before bed or in the morning or something like that. You can also use it to flavor your yogurt. Oops, let me go back. This is something we do for our grandson. I think I've told you that he loves that organic, unflavored, unsweetened yogurt, and we mix into it the the Vital Fuel Shake, as well as a little bit of the detox tea. And it makes this beautiful yellow yogurt that he just craves. And it's so good for him. Again, low inflammation. It doesn't mess up digestion. It doesn't cause the body to create congestion, inflammation, and then it allows the body to continue to heal for an extended period of time. If you start your day off with that, you had from the time you stopped eating at night all the way through the night and until you eat at lunch, that your body is able to stay in this low inflammation state. In addition to being a wonderful meal replacements, we've added some of our superfoods and things that you know of that are so powerful, our ginger and our turmeric and our muscadine that are inside of these products, inside of our Vital Fuel Shake, inside of our Java Boost. And so lots of ways that you can prepare it. Even you can cook with it, okay? And if you don't have Jen's Make It Keto cookbook, that's available, but this has recipes in there, sorry, where you can make pumpkin rolls. This is a low inflammation, low carbohydrate, high fat, high protein, alternative to having inflammatory foods. So you can make pancakes or waffles or crepes that are actually healthy, actually good for you. Now, you don't want to go drowning them with a whole bunch of sugar. You want to try and keep the trend going. But these are examples and recipes that are in her recipe book of how you can find alternatives that will keep you on track, which will not create an inflammatory response. And we love that. So I think that's all I'm going to share from this PowerPoint. But I wanted to also mention that this can be done with the Java Boost. I've talked to people who love the flavor, but they like their cup in the Joe in the morning, they like it black. And so in order to get the beneficial nutrients that are in the Java Boost, they put it in a shake. They add it to their Vital Fuel Shake, or they put it in yogurt. They make a Java flavored yogurt. I had one person tell me they took one of Jen's recipes with the Vital Fuel Shake and made crepes, and then they made a Java Boost topping over the crepes. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do that give you the nutrients, that give you the mixtures, but don't create an inflammatory response, and allow you to feel good, allow you to feel full, satiate any of your cravings. There's one time Jen actually made a coffee cake. If any of you like coffee cake, she made a coffee cake with the Vital Fuel Shake and the Java Boost crumble on top. She made a crumble with it. So there's a lot of wonderful things you can do. I'm pretty basic. I just throw it in water. but there's, if you want to get creative, there's a lot of fun things you can do. But just think about the idea. You're giving yourself a rest overnight. And breakfast is called break the fast. Well, what if you could break that fast in a way that doesn't actually trigger autoimmune response or inflammatory response and allows the healing to continue? And rather than eat breakfast and feel crummy and then try to survive till lunch and then eat something and feel crummy and try to survive till dinner, you can take one of these meals and replace it with something that your body recognizes as healthy, recognizes as easy to digest, easy to break down, powerful nutrients and things found in it. And the body says, you know what? I don't have to raise blood sugar. I don't have to freak out. There's no allergens. And instead extends that period of repairing, rebuilding, and maintaining yourself. So those are some ideas. We usually talk about these meal replacements as a weight loss strategy, and they are that. But the reason they are is because they keep blood sugar from spiking and creating an insulin response. And so are they good for maintaining or losing weight? They absolutely are. But the reason is because they're anti-inflammatory. Sugar causes massive inflammation. Vegetable oils, when food are cooked with it, causes massive inflammation. Pesticides, herbicides, the things that we're finding in our produce, the genetic modification of our wheat, these things cause inflammation. The body has struggles to break it down and it responds to it. And so this is just one way to extend that idea of being able to have low inflammation for longer periods of time during the day, and it's easy and it's convenient. So I think I'll pause here and see if anybody has any questions or comments about this idea, or the use of the Vital Fuel Shake or the Java Boost.
Mr. Smith, thank you for this information. I apologize that I have my camera off, and if you see me, you would want me to keep it off. But
no problem, Monique.
Thank you. I thought about something. Our oldest daughter is allergic to tree nuts, and over the years, probably within the last, I would say 10 years, maybe Terrence would know a little bit more. She has discovered that she is gluten intolerant.
Mm.
I was thinking that the shake would be a good meal replacement. I just thought about that. Would that be a good fit for her?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, any food allergies or sensitivities, because usually if we identify that we're allergic to one thing, there are others that we tend to also be sensitive to. And so it just means that our immune system is kind of on overdrive. It's on alert, right? It's always watching. And so we have a level of inflammation almost at all times. And so having her extend a period of time, already she's not going to consume any tree nuts or gluten while she's sleeping, right? Because she's sleeping. And so taking and extending that for a few more hours, either in the evening or in the morning, for her is going to be beneficial, and it'll actually make the rest of the time even less impacting, because the immune system gets a time to rest and to calm down and to say, oh, I'm not in I'm not on alert, and it can take the next day with a little bit of peace. If we go to sleep at night having alerted our immune response and having an immune response to that, then what happens is all through the night the body is, am I on alert? Do I need to defend myself? And it doesn't get a break, and it can't reset. You've probably heard about some of the strategies for helping people overcome allergies. And the way they do that is they go for a period of time without any of the offending agent, and then slowly introduce small amounts of that agent again, so that the immune system, during that time of zero, the immune system calms down and it kind of resets. But it still has a record of the things that upset it before. And so when you introduce small amounts, there's not enough that the immune system gets scared. And then over time, the body says, wait, I have gluten in my system and I'm not reacting to it. Oh, maybe it's not as bad as I thought. Or some of the proteins that I used to think were offensive in nuts, well, they're in my system, they're in my blood. I now see them, but they've been there for a while and we've been okay. We survived. And so it starts to rewrite the list of things that are offensive to it. That's how, if you go to a naturopathic doctor and you say, I've got these food allergies, I want to try and overcome them, they will do a food rotation diet where they will restrict those offending agents for a period of time, then slowly introduce things, slowly introduce in a very pure and organized form. And then all of a sudden the body says, oh, that's not a bad thing after all, and it erases it off its list. So you're kind of doing that on a daily basis if you give the body a chance at night and even extension to reset and relook at its list. If it doesn't have that reset time, then it stays on alert. It's like a fire chief that always has a fire somewhere in its city. It stays on alert 24/7 because it has to always send out crews. But if it has enough capacity to actually go for a period of time without any fires, then the fire chief can kind of settle down a little bit, get a little more strategic, spend time, being a little more smart as to where he positions the resources. If he's always on alert and always sending crews out, he might send more of a crew to one than he needed to, and here because he doesn't have the time to really be smart about it. And that's kind of, these are all just analogies to try and understand how our immune system is responding and acting. Does that help?
Yes, I tell you, God's creation of the body to reset itself, to replenish, cell renewal is incredible. So I'm actually going to talk to her about that. It's just interesting. Gluten intolerant 20, 30 years ago, even for I don't ever remember that. That was never an issue until now. They have a whole product line of breads and cookies and cakes, and it's interesting, very interesting. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You bet. And a lot of times it's not necessarily the gluten, it's what the gluten is carrying in with it. And it's really a different
Mm.
thing today because we have hybridized our wheat and we've genetically modified our wheat. And so what we've done, it's like 90% or more of the wheat we produce in America now is Roundup resistant or glyphosate resistant. And so the reason we've done that is because in the past we're all familiar with the parable of the wheat and the tares, right? We're all familiar with that, where a farmer plants wheat and then the tares appear, the weeds appear.
Yes.
And so how does that happen? Well, that happens because when you plant a field, the field is also exposed to everything else that's blowing in from the wind, right? Now, obviously in the parable, we have the wicked coming in and planting these seeds of the tares. But in life, if you're a wheat farmer, you plant your field with your wheat seed and it's open, and there's other things being blown in, other seeds are in the air, and then when the wheat grows, you can't tell the difference because wheat looks like a grass when it first starts growing, and the weeds look like grasses when they first start growing. And it's not until later when the wheat actually comes to seed and gets, the head on it, that you say, oh, that's wheat. But intermixed amongst all of that are the tares or the grasses, the weeds. And so as a wheat farmer, you would go through and you would scythe the tops of these fields to get the wheat. You didn't want the tares. Going in and pulling all of that grass or those tares out would actually pull the wheat out with them. You had to wait and harvest after the wheat had come to seed and had risen above the other grasses. So that parable plays upon, it shares with us kind of this idea of what has happened in the past as far as a wheat farmer. They could only grow so much wheat per acre because the tares were taking up, the weeds were taking up some of the nutrients and the space. Well, by producing a herbicide resistant wheat, which is what we've done. We've created with Monsanto, we've created a genetically modified wheat seed that you can spray with weed killer, right? A tear killer, and it will kill the weeds, the grasses, but not the wheat. And so the farmers are able to spray all of their fields. Well, what does that do? That allows more sunshine, moisture, nutrients from the soil, and space to the wheat. And so you can grow more. You don't have to worry about all the weeds. And so from a farming perspective, from a profitability perspective for growing wheat, this is a wonderful breakthrough. Farmers can produce somewhere around 8 times the amount of wheat per acre as they could prior to this discovery. So what a wonderful breakthrough. And we're not having to pull weeds, we're not having to wait to harvest. We can actually produce a genetically modified wheat that goes to seed sooner because we don't have to wait. We now have snow wheat, we have early wheat, all of these. So we get bumper crops and all of these, and it's a wonderful. We have more wheat than we've ever had in the history of mankind, and it's amazing what we can produce. The negative to it, all that wheat is saturated with glyphosate, and so it's loaded with it because we've sprayed it multiple times. And what we do to cause it to come to seed sooner so that you can harvest it and get another crop in the ground, we double the amount of glyphosate we put on it. Now it can't resist it anymore, and it actually thinks it's dying. It thinks it's winter, and so it goes to seed, and it actually produces even more wheat than it would have if you let it go to seed at a natural pace. So even more. That's why they're producing even more wheat, because they get multiple crops. They can bring it to maturation or maturity sooner. All of this with these chemical herbicides. And we think, amazing, wonderful. The problem is nobody actually went and spent the research to say, what does that do to the human body or animals, right? The animals that these wheat goes into their feed. What does it do to these organisms? What does it do to the bugs? What does it do to the ecosystem? And the truth of the matter is we have really, really harmed all of these parts. Human health, animal health, ecosystem, it's all been damaged because of this alteration with these chemicals. And that is the reason why we can't even give our wheat away in the world. As a nation now, we want to donate wheat because we have excess. We can't consume it all. And so the United States will try to donate it to other places in the world that are deficient, are starving, don't have enough wheat, and they won't take it, because along with that wheat come all sorts of health issues. And so Europe, they won't allow any of it to even enter. Canada won't take our wheat. Asia won't take our wheat. The only place we can get rid of our wheat is when we give it to Africa. And so the U.S. government will buy up the surplus wheat from our farmers, and they'll donate it and give it away. And if we don't think about these issues underlying it, then we don't understand. And this is why I can eat bread here and have major upset stomach. I can go to Europe and have bread, and I don't get any digestive response from it. It's the same reason why if I eat bread here, I get, I feel very, very sick to my stomach. But if I eat sourdough, I feel less, because what does sourdough do? It eats up the gluten and the chemicals, the natural things that are in there eat up some of the chemicals and consume them and change them in the process of fermentation. So lots of things we can learn with this. We've learned how to hybridize soy and corn and wheat and genetically modify these things so that we can grow more, increase productivity, bushels per acre, et cetera. And that's wonderful. What we haven't done then is made up for that change in our digestive systems. And so, eventually the human population would adapt to this, right? Adaptation would occur, and the survival of the fittest, right? The ones whose digestive systems don't react, they'd be able to have more children, and over generation after generation, thousands and thousands of years, you'd see an adaptation that would occur. But we just don't have time for that. So what we have to do instead is we have to get smart. We have to, lean on sourdough recipes. We try to import wheat. The Canadian wheat is actually quite easy to import, which doesn't have these things in it. And so there's a lot of things you can do for your daughter, Monique. Your daughter is one who's developed a sensitivity and even an intolerance to it. And so she can go gluten-free. I just want you to know that doesn't necessarily solve the problem, because these chemicals are in a lot of things. But what she can do is she can source wheat from other places in the world and make things with that and do well. So there's other options to your daughter.
Okay, well, I'm going to pick your brain offline because it makes a lot of sense, because friends have told her, she's a dancer, and overseas and other countries, it validates exactly what you're saying. They can eat bread. It's never an issue. It's here in the United States, it's an issue.
Yeah.
My goodness.
And the
Thank you
problem
so
is
much.
that finds its way into pasta and everything else, right? Because
Yes.
we use the grain and flour for a lot of our processed foods.
Yeah, it's a racket, I think. This whole community of gluten-free, they're making some good money.
They are. And for people that don't know any other options, it's helpful to them, right? But eventually, a lot of the gluten-free food, unfortunately, is so highly processed. And here's the thing is you'll look at it, and a lot of the emulsifiers and things they'll use in those foods are made with soy. Well, our soy is consuming the same problem. Okay. It doesn't have gluten in it, but it has glyphosate because we've genetically modified it so that it also can resist, the glyphosate. So anyway, there's some solutions that are kind of out of the box, and one of them is to access some wheat from Canada and Europe and places like that. All right. Any other questions or comments? I've kept you guys longer today.
You gave us some great information, phenomenal information, Mr. Todd. We thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Darlene. I hope it's helpful. And think about that, everybody. Think about trying to extend your low inflammation time period, right? Either by making sure you have a low inflammation dinner, low inflammation breakfast, something like that. Turn the hours into extending the time period where your inflammation is down. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we'll go ahead and bring this to a close. I thank everybody for being here and wish you all a great Saturday. And we'll catch you again. Those of you doing the BulaFit challenge, we have our BulaFit coaching call Monday evening. Have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye,
Mr.
everybody. Thank you. Y'all have a safe, great weekend.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.